Here's a question I think a lot of people in the audience would be really keen to hear your thoughts on, which is how can artists and small to medium organisations develop deeper personal relationships with philanthropists? And once a relationship is established, how can artists and organisations best position themselves to garner long-term commitment? So I guess it's about going from the first date into getting married.
I think it's a really interesting one. Again, my experience here is actually seeing the work that's being done out of ICE and other arts organisations. I'm a huge arts consumer. And this is the thing, for me, an absolute joy would be to be able to engage with an artist without thinking that you're coming across as a, there's seriously...
Sums it up perfectly.
Yeah. And that's a technical term.
Yep. Sorry, we can
I guess it's about that transactional thing that also Louise was talking about at the top, that there's actually a genuine love or regard, and you were sort of talking about that earlier, Esty, as well, which was I don't have artists in my life. It's valuable to have sort of that kind of person or thinking in your life, so that there is a way that you can offer something.
I also think that a lot of, CEOs and GMs, they find this subject very difficult. I've seen many who absolutely detest anything to do with corporate sponsorship. And I sort of get that because it can be tough doing that wooing and relationship building with corporate sponsors, and then, they stuff you around, and then the thing is then the management changes and you spend all that time and effort, and, if you're small to medium, you've got to stay clear of that unless the board members can actually help bring in, they've got the relationships that can help bring in those corporate partnerships. But the difference with donors is that they're typically a joy to deal with. They genuinely want to be more engaged, they want to get more involved, that they're up for having interesting conversations, with staff and board members. So it's not that much of a chore to actually, work with them, and you're going to get a much better return than you are from corporate sponsorships. It's not all going to convert and grow over time, because sometimes it doesn't work. It's like dating. You're just not getting necessarily, the success rate's not always going to be great, but I think you've got a much better chance. But I think the important thing also is a lot of organisations do end of financial year appeals, right? And I see it all the time. They do them and they complain and say, oh, gee, we didn't get much out of that. Oh, it's a pain in the arse, got to turn around and do it again this year. But what's happening is, when the results come through, they're not actually spending enough time actually analysing the results of that appeal, because there could be the odd donor in there. Like the average for the arts is about $40 or $50, right? If you're a charity, it's $20 or $30. And, there'll be the odd donation that'll be $100 or $200. Now, if that's happening, you don't just send them the thank you letter and put them on the database and try again next year. You should be the right person in the organisation should be picking up the phone, and saying, hey, we just want to personally thank you for the gift that you've made. It might sound completely over the top, but you know what? Some of those people will want to have the coffee with you.
Absolutely.
To start the real getting to know you. Because that's when the big bucks come.
I guess the end of financial year is really the Valentine's Day of the relationship, really. It can't just be a one-off once. It has to be that sort of, you have to have romance in your everyday. Exactly. And I guess that wooing in the everyday. And I've really milked that metaphor too far.